Welcome to the West Wing. Today we're morphing into the food channel. We'll be talking to a pair of the more accomplished foodies in the office. Christopher Areola is the head of our community prosecution unit. Aside from his broad legal expertise that encompasses the juvenile system and many other assignments, I think he knows some of the best restaurants in town. Zim Vo is a relative newcomer to the office and serves on the misdemeanor team, but her status in the social media world is one of a veteran and extremely popular food blogger. Zim has about 40,000 followers on Instagram. Chris has fewer. Welcome, Zim.
Hi, Sean.
What's your ideal pre-trial breakfast?
Ideal pre-trial breakfast. Well, having a breakfast at all is always a good thing. Sometimes I find myself just rushing to do work, but ideally, I love oatmeal, just a basic bowl of oatmeal. Sometimes I use actual oats, sometimes I use some other grains like buckwheat or something. But I make it fancy. I add peanut butter, I add chocolate sometimes, I add the fruits that are in season. Basically, oatmeal is not really the star, I just add everything else to it. You add almonds for crunch. That's my ideal breakfast before trial.
Are you superstitious before trial? Do you have other superstitions?
No, I'm not. I just go in there and think I'm going to try my best and hopefully it works out.
If you have a giant breakfast, like if you had like bacon and eggs, I'm imagining you to imagine this because I don't think you have bacon or eggs regularly on your menu.
You know, they have a lot of products on the market that's, tempeh bacon, for example, that's not really made out of pork, but it's made out of soybeans.
Right.
And they have vegan eggs now that's also not obviously made out of eggs, but a substitute. And they're getting really good at making those kind of products that remind you of those comfort foods, but no animal has to be harmed in that process.
Right. So needless to say, you're a vegan prosecutor.
Yeah.
Right. And we've talked about this. You don't feel like there's any sort of contrast or contradiction in the profession and not eating animal products?
No, I don't. I think in the same way that in my work I want to stand up for what's right and do the right thing, I think in my personal life eating food or without meat was what I believe to be the right thing to do. So I think that's pretty consistent.
Is it hard when everybody else wants to go out and have lunch and have like these giant hamburgers or huge bowls of ramen with beef broth or pork broth or something like that?
Not as hard as I thought it would be, because I think we're really lucky to live in a town that has a lot of those options. And my colleagues are always really accommodating, picking a restaurant that I could eat in. And I think ultimately food is a very personal choice. So I understand that for me, it's important to eat a certain way. And I think for other people, it's important for them to eat a certain way, whether that's because they value food for enjoyment or cultural values. So to me, it's just different ideas and different ways of doing things. It doesn't mean we can't all enjoy a meal together.
How do you take such great photographs of food? Whenever I try to do it, it looks like a failed high school science experiment. Like, how do you manage to make it look so professional? Do you have a background in photography?
No, I don't. I've always loved photography. I remember subscribing to National Geographic since I was at least 15, just really enjoying being able to see a photograph and then understanding more than that just from a photograph. And so with food, I think it's very natural that a lot of times food looks good because especially with vegetables or fruits, they come in different colors and textures, so it's easy to make it look nice. But I have to admit that a lot of the photos I take aren't as effortless as they seem. It does take a while to, you move the bowls around, that kind of thing. So
right.
Sometimes the food gets cold before I actually take the photo.
Is there any correlation between taste and attractiveness when you take these photographs? Like, have you ever had this beautiful setup and you tried to eat it afterward and it just tasted terrible, or the other way around?
I would never admit that my food tastes terrible, but I think generally because we eat with our eyes too, so when food looks good and you put on all that effort to make it look good, then for some reason when you eat it, you're not just eating the food, but you're eating the effort behind it. So in that sense, I think it actually tastes better. But I've also had food that are just brown looking, but they taste amazing, that never make it to my Instagram. So I think it goes both ways.
Brown looking. I like that. Sadly, if your life and your career came crashing down and you had to order your last meal, what would it be?
Order my last meal. goodness. I have one of my favorite restaurants is called Millennium. It used to be in San Francisco. Now they're in Oakland. And they make this fried oyster mushrooms. They encrust it with cornmeal. And it's just a very simple dish. Like, you can make it at home too. Just dip it in a batter and you fry it. But the way they do it is just very light, crispy. It has that umami flavor. And I remember having that dish maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I just fell in love with it. So if I had to eat, that would be probably the last dish I would order.
I can imagine the guards at San Quentin, like, going to Millennium, like, we have a strange request, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's not that far then from San
You're
Quentin.
right.
Yeah.
You're right. Maybe this is doable.
Okay, you take that notes.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Chris.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good.
Good. As the head of the community prosecutions team, how much does food break down barriers between law enforcement and the people that we serve?
Oh, it's a great conduit, I think, for any people anywhere to share a meal or even a cup of coffee, and that could vary in different parts of town, from pan dulce, Mexican sweetbread, to boba with a cop in Little Saigon, to just inviting people to lunch and taking that time to be with them while you eat. I think can really have a bonding and effect and take down the walls that really separate people.
Yeah, I like that. Describe the food scene in San Jose. A lot of people don't know it outside of the city, I would say, but it's so diverse, right? If San Jose had an iconic dish, what would the dish be?
Oh, well, obviously it has to be either a taco or a pho. That's San Jose, does not have a Michelin-starred restaurant. But the beauty of San Jose is it doesn't have a Michelin-starred restaurant, right? It's the mom and pop shops. You can use Yelp or an app, or you can just drive around and try different taco places, Vietnamese places, Chinese, and everything in between, from a burger to, dumpling. And that's really the fun part of San Jose. Yes, if you want the white tablecloth experience, maybe you need to go to another part of the county or San Francisco, sure. But if you want to eat good food and be really surprised at where you find it, San Jose is a really great place.
All right, so Chris starts his own food truck business. Mm. What kind of food would you serve? What kind of truck would it be?
Well, I think my dream always was to have a Korean taco truck. I think those two food ideas go together so well. Korean street food, Mexican street food, the spiciness in Korean food. Of course, I had this idea 20 years ago, but someone, of course, stole it from me, and because they have initiative and drive to actually do it. I had, short ribs with chorizo in a quesadilla. It was just awesome. I mean, way too much stuff, but it was great. And,
I think all of LA stole your idea, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
All right. So I usually don't ask guests the same question, but I asked the previous guest this question, and I'll ask you this question. Unfortunately, sadly, your career, your life has come to an end, and you have to order a last meal. What would that last meal be?
That's tough. That's a tough one.
Well, it's tough to have to order your last meal.
Do I get time and place as well, or does it have to be here?
It has to be, well, you're not here. If it's a last meal, you're probably in San Quentin.
Hope not. But, goodness, that's a tough one. I'd probably pick one of the two, either chorizo and eggs with my grandpa's chili beans and his salsa and things like that, that home cooked meal. But my second one would be any time in the tapas bars in San Sebastian, Spain would be really awesome too. Oh. So that's a tough one. I got the homey one, want the chorizo and eggs at home, but that's just a great meal when you can go from place to place and try their samples. And
you just got back from Spain, right?
I did, yeah, and I did in October. I went on a trip with a bunch of lawyers.
And so describe for people who haven't been there, what are tapas in San Sebastian?
Oh, well, I unfortunately didn't go to San Sebastian. I went to central Spain, and it was really beautiful. But it's just the culture of, people don't eat dinner till 8, 9, 10, even 11 o'clock at night on a weekday. So it's very customary to have small snacks at the bar anytime after 4, say, and you walk around from place to place, and you can make a meal of it, of course, because you buy a drink and you have a sample or two, and they're not the appetizers you get here in America, which are these big plates. They're just little bite-sized samples of different food, and the fresh seafood, chorizo, peppers. I mean, Spain is so wonderful. You don't get the spiciness you do in, say, Latin America, but you get the fresh seafood flavors and olive oil. It's just a really wonderful shared experience, again, where you're drinking with your friends or family and going from place to place as you feel like it.
So your last meal would be like an ice cold glass of sherry with some stuffed peppers or something like
Probably
that.
a nice cava, the Catalonian version of champagne, and some nice squid, calamari, grilled, of course, and with maybe some kind of chorizo to go with that.
What a way to go.
That'd be all right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.